Great. Well, good evening. My name is Cynthia Krafts, and this is the Transportation Advisory Board regular monthly meeting, and I'm currently the chair of this board. This is the first time we're meeting in person, so welcome everybody. It's really nice to see everybody in person. This is very exciting. I'm sure everyone's going to take a little getting used to being in person and fiddling with papers and remembering how to do things. We're of course hybrid, so the whole board is here, but there may be members of the public and staff that are attending virtually, but all the board members will be attending in person. So before I get started with the agenda, I would like to recognize Councilmember Michelle, who wants to say a hello before we begin.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am Barbara Michelle. I'm on the Issaquah City Council, and on behalf of the council, I'm here to welcome you back to in-person meetings. You are one of the first groups to meet in person, but all of our boards and commissions are coming back to in-person meetings, and a council member is dedicated to attend every one of those meetings. So we're very, very happy to have you back, and I know the other thing that the council would like me to say is we are so appreciative of our boards and commissions. The time that you put in is very valued, and we love to hear your opinion. Cynthia asked me what my role is tonight, and my role is to listen. I won't be participating in the dialogue at all. I get a chance to weigh in when things come to the council, but I'm very, very interested in the topic tonight. Transportation is one of my focus areas, and I'm going to be very, very interested in hearing the discussion that you're going to have tonight. So again, thank you so much for your service to the city of Issaquah, and welcome back to in-person meetings. Thank you.
Before we move on to the approval of the minutes, I also do want to recognize that we have two regular board members not in attendance, which makes Jerry, who's our alternate, a full-fledged member, voting member this evening. So thank you for your service as a steady alternate. And with that, I am moving on to item 2, which is seeking approval of the minutes by unanimous I thank you. I would like to seek approval by unanimous consent of the minutes with one minor adjustment, and that is to strike the chair report comment that was personal in nature. And with that, I will seek approval with that change by unanimous consent. Hearing no complaints or objections, they are approved with that minor modification. Thank you. Okay, so I don't see any other members of the public in the room. Do we have any members of the public online that would like to make any comments?
There is a number ending in 03 that I am going to unmute now so you can speak.
Hi, Cynthia, this is Dave Wagoner. I'm in Pasco, Washington. I'm attending by phone. I told Isabel that I'm at the State of Washington Convention for the American Legion. So I'm listening by phone. So I hope that I get credited for being in attendance. And it's 101 degrees over here. So I'm glad you guys are not here with me. And that's it. So I am part of the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your dedication. Yikes. Okay. Were there any other public comment?
No, I don't see any other comments.
Okay. That brings us to regular business. Item 4. Before I turn it over to a presentation from Mr. John Losh and friend, I just want to make a couple comments. You'll notice we have one agenda item tonight, so we're going to have a chance to dive deep. And the way that we're hoping to structure this is that we have a presentation from staff. You should feel free to ask all of your questions. And one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes we exhaust all of our discussion, energy, asking questions. And I want to make sure, I want one of those cookies when they come around. So I would encourage you to ask all of your questions either during or after. And then at some point, we will switch to deliberation and asking. I'm going to ask a series of questions. I'm going to ask you to have an opinion. I'm going to ask you to jot it down. And so that we can have a discussion amongst ourselves about what we think about the questions that are before us. So that's what I'm hoping to get out of this evening. And if we can get all the way to the point where we actually have a formal recommendation, that would be awesome. So we're going to get as far through that as we can. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. Have I forgotten anything? Okay.
All right.
He doesn't need to.
We're still in person. I got to share my screen. Well, good evening, Tab. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to be able to present this topic. This is a topic that I've been working on for months now, and I'm really excited to share what we found. So tonight's topic is transit shuttle options for the Squak and Talus neighborhoods. I'm John Larson Friend. I am the Transportation Program Coordinator. So the first thing that we would like, the purpose of this evening is to present the most viable options for a shuttle service for the Squak and Talus neighborhoods to connect to the transit center and other major locations in Issaquah. Specifically, the direction that we're looking for tonight is we're looking for tab feedback on any changes to the evaluation criteria, which we will go over those, the pros and cons of each of the first mile, last mile options that we are presenting, and to make a collective recommendation ultimately on which option to pursue and then recommend down the line. So just as a reminder, I'm sure you're all familiar with where everything is in Issaquah, but for those who may not be as familiar, this is a map of depicting the downtown and central business districts in kind of that orange-yellow color there. We have Squak Mountain and we have Talus. These two neighborhoods are generally kind of cut off from the rest of, especially the downtown and central business districts, due to man-made and just natural topography. Talus neighborhood is down SR 900. It's not a great place to walk. It's not a great place to ride bikes. It's a whole mile from the entrance to Talus all the way down to the transit center specifically. And then getting up into the Talus neighborhood, it's a hill.
Very steep.
Very steep, yes. And very similarly with Squak Mountain, hence the name, it is also basically on a huge hill. There's not a lot of connective sidewalks, bike lanes. It's even I've driven through, like driving through, I'm like, I would not want to be on this road whatsoever. So today we are kind of presenting a few options that might be viable as far as some sort of neighborhood transit shuttle. But first, I'm going to kind of get into some previous history just to kind of give you some context. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Will you at some point in the presentation describe like what exactly the service would be? Like I was looking through it and it's not clear. You say first last mile, you're gonna
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm probably gonna give you too much information. So it's really fun. But first, before we get to that, I do want to give some background, some history, so that we're all kind of on the same page as to how we got here today. I'll have a few different levels. We'll kind of start up high, and we'll go medium, and then very recent history. So first of all, in 1995, the city formed a temporary transit advisory committee, and it led to the development of the 2003 transit needs study. In addition to that transit needs study, Metro started a freebie transit shuttle, which was the first iteration of Route 200, which was free for community members to use. Between 2003 and 2013, the city did try to initiate a Metro-run shuttle service with no success outside of that Route 200. In 2015, Highlands neighborhood efforts resulted in Route 200 being extended into, let me go back. 2013, new effort involving the Highlands neighborhood emerged to consider a local shuttle of their own. And then in 2015, those efforts resulted in Route 200 being extended into the Highlands and to Swedish Hospital. It also led to the creation of Route 628, which runs to North Bend and Squak. In 2020, the Highlands again explored a privately run shuttle option, but due to high operating costs and the effects of the pandemic, it was ultimately voted down by the Highlands Council. Budgetary problems due to the pandemic also led Metro to suspend Route 200, and the route was ultimately canceled altogether in 2021. So zooming in a little bit more, so efforts to initiate a shuttle service for specifically the Squak and Talus neighborhoods started in 2017. The city applied for Metro's Community Connections program. You might be familiar, there's one in Snohomish, no, sorry. Yeah, Sammamish, thank you, sorry. And then in 2018, the city was selected to explore a new project to connect Squak and Talus to the greater Issaquah area. 2019, a group was formed to explore those options, and the program was finalized. In 2020, major changes to Metro's project management and COVID-19 forced the project to be put on hold. And in 2021, Metro announced that multiple community connections projects, including Issaquah's, were no longer prioritized and were canceled altogether. So that leads us to what I'm doing, what the process has been most recently. So in 2021, June 2021, following the cancellation of the community connections projects, the administration returned to City Council for guidance on next steps. Staff had been chatting with Metro at the time about collaborating on an Issaquah shuttle, and the council advised to move forward with a Metro partnership. Sometime between June 2021 and March 2022, when I became part of staff, Metro suspended all pilot projects until further notice. And I did confirm that a couple of weeks ago, and it's still the case. All pilot projects have put on indefinite hold. In fall 2022, we will be going back to council, which of course, coming here to TAP tonight is kind of the first step in that process. And then I also want to point out that in 2023 or 2024, there will be changes to bus routes in Issaquah as a part of the East Link expansion. And here is the map of that. So here, not see my text. So Metro is consolidating, or at least as a transportation planner myself, Metro is seems to be consolidating bus lines to create more efficiency within their system. So within transit planning, there's always a tension between coverage versus frequency. Metro seems to be moving towards frequency in this area. And so we'll have, so there's always a finite amount of buses that they have. Do we have more coverage, or do we have one, kind of almost express, or two kind of expresses and have more frequency come along those lines? It looks like that's the direction that Metro is going. And then, can you see my mouse? No, you can. So a couple of notes here. The 554 right now runs along Newport Way. They will be shifting that up to Gilman to kind of cover that central business district. And then pop, of course, back up to the Issaquah Highlands.
Does it go to the Issaquah Transit Center, 554?
Yeah, I actually asked that question because you can't really tell. So it will come along I-90 as it always has, pop into the Issaquah Transit Center, go up along Gilman, downtown, past City Hall, and then up to the Highlands.
It's gonna go down Front Street.
Oh, that's the plan.
Question on
Yes.
the Metro 214 that goes direct from the transit center to downtown Seattle. What will happen?
That can be discontinued.
And is there another replacement bus that will go from the transit center to Bellevue Transit Center then? That's a hub point for attention the rail to go downtown.
That is a great question that I don't know the answer to. I'll take note of that. Yeah, it looks like it's gone. So that brings us to Route 203. So 203, you'll notice, is the orange line. There's not the orange line, but it's an orange line the goal of this bus line is to basically act in place of the future Link light rail. The future of the Link light rail, theoretically, it'll come down I-90, and the station will be somewhere around here. So this new bus line is supposed to get the public used to what it might feel like to take that route into Issaquah, which is why it'll come down Newport Way. It'll hit the transit center, and then it'll also have stops in the Costco campus here, which will really closely mirror, hopefully, we'll have that connection point, the pedestrian or bicycle connection overpass or underpass that is being proposed at the moment to kind of give people who work for Costco or want to go to the Costco area kind of a feel for what it might feel like to have a transit station right there. Yeah.
Follow-up question, with the new bus routes, do we have input into the types of buses they use, whether it's the smaller buses as opposed to the articulated ones?
It'll be the articulated one. That's been pretty much finalized at this point.
Sorry, when does the 203 start?
Yes, so these new routes will go into effect, I assume, the day that Eastlink opens Bellevue. So it'll be a concurrent opening to kind of a big scramble and getting everything set when the Eastlink comes again. Great question.
I think Dave might have a question. There's a hand up.
Yes,
there.
there is a hand.
It
Little tiny
was
hand.
for the comment. It's just that-
Yes, so the 554 though then we'll be stopping right at Bellevue Transit Center, South Bellevue Transit Center.
Yes,
What I
yes,
understood.
that's correct. Thank you for that.
Sorry, one more question. We're really.
No, please, I love it.
This, I know, what happened to the 271?
There's just a question.
I believe it has also been, anything that's not on here is probably gone, is my perception. This is the latest map that I was given. I may be wrong about that. I'm willing to be wrong about that.
And the 271 does go to Bellevue
And I'll go over to the UW.
and over to the UW, and they, you can take Sound Tram, you can take, I think, light rail to UW after, once light rail
I'll
starts.
definitely follow up on this.
Yeah.
That's my question as far as do we have, I see there's someone on the phone who has a hand up also. But they have, do we have input into these bus routes for what we'd like to see?
As far as I know, I believe this is the final draft. All these routes are currently, if you go to Eastlink on the Metro website, all these routes individually have been posted.
Okay.
So I believe that this is what they're aiming for pretty solidly.
I believe they did a community survey, my time might be off, but a couple, maybe 3, 4, 6 months ago to help arrive at this.
Yeah, we were part of that.
I think, yeah, they
There was
talked
a-
about
They did
it.
come and talk to us.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we made any, it wasn't like an agenda item that we deliberated on and, and had any deep input, but they did come and give us an update, and I suspect, yeah, anyway. So I don't want to I do want us to keep moving. I know we're all very interested in this, but let's stick to the matter at hand.
Is there a hand up?
I was just going to mention, for the participating in the meeting should be in person, but wanted to ask if you wanted to address that.
Is
Allow
Tisha still
David.
here? I wasn't sure what was happening.
She just left.
Oh. What kind of direction were you getting from?
From you, if you would like to allow David.
Yes.
Mike seems to.
If it's
have a
okay
question.
with, if we're not, yes.
David, I am going to unmute, so it looks like you have questions, and we are allowing you to do so now.
Thanks for unmuting me. Not questions so much as comments. I don't think anybody in that room has driven these routes. I have. And I think I can speak clearly for the fact that I know exactly what's happening with that Route 203. That's actually the Highlands old 200 route. That's exactly what that is, that gold one, except it only went to the transit center. The 554, that's going to be unique when it goes through downtown. That's going to delay it from the way it used to run. So there's major changes coming up. And I have one very important comment to make. One, Metro Transit is extremely short on drivers. So even if these got approved, I don't know that they would be filled, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So it's too soon to have this all locked in concrete. There's going to have to be a lot of recovery on the metro side of the house before this ever comes into being. And that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.
One more comment, I was just looking on the Eastlink page, and they do show a little slightly different bus route in there. They do have the 214 in there.
Oh, great.
Where it is now.
Well, in any case, it doesn't go up to Squak or Talus.
Yes.
So let's-
Long story short, honestly, I appreciate all your comments and questions because I did the exact same thing when I saw this map. I was like, what does this all mean? So I will move on if that's all right.
We got one more.
Oh,
Yeah,
so sorry.
Question.
Yeah.
Where does 269 go to? Like, does it
That
run
goes,
across?
I believe that goes to Highlands, if I'm not mistaken.
I see it goes like up. Like,
Oh,
does
yeah.
it just like stop at Highlands, or does it go
Oh,
all the way
yeah.
to, like
And
through
then it
Tsunami?
goes, yeah, good point. This goes up, up towards Redmond, I think, something like that. I've seen the map. It's kind of that other rural connection.
And then does it go through I-90 West, or?
It doesn't stop at the transit center, right?
Oh, it's that gray one. Okay, so yeah, it comes through here. Yeah, great question. All right. So I'm gonna transition over to the options that we have come up with. I'm gonna throw a lot of information at you, so I expect a lot of questions. It's gonna be really fun. I think it's gonna be a really great discussion. So just to go over these options before I dive into them, the first option that we came up with is waiting for Metro to relaunch pilot programs and pursue King County run shuttle. The second one, create and implement a city-funded third-party shuttle. And third, partner with Uber and or Lyft on a subsidized rideshare service. So before we dive into the actual options, I do want to go over the evaluation criteria that's just so clear on it, because that is one of the things that we're asking feedback on. So first, the cost to user per ride is approximately how much riders will pay per ride. Cost to city per year, the projected city investment into the program option per year. City administration is the level of needed program participation by the city. Convenience is the ease in which the service is accessed by the riders. Reliability, likelihood that the service will arrive when and where riders need it. Scalability is that the ability to increase, that the process of increasing the complexity of scalability is what the service area increase process complexity and feasibility will be. Equity concerns, any potential barriers to ridership, including income, smartphone, access, place of residence, mobility limitations, etc. And timeline is the year of what we think the potential start of service might be. This evaluation, just so you know, when we're evaluating the specific service, we're looking at the service itself. It doesn't include the time between now and the start of service. So just to keep that in mind. So looking at the wait for Metro option. So this would involve kind of almost a bit of a status quo. We would just kind of keep going the way we've been going. We will keep waiting for Metro to restart those potential pilots. But once that service starts, that's what we're analyzing now. So the cost of the user per ride would be very low. It'd be $275. Theoretically, it would be the same cost as a bus. That's what they do for other shuttle services that they have throughout the county. The cost to the city per year is also low. Historically, all of those responsibilities and costs would be bared by the county. That would of course mean that the city administration level would be quite low. Convenience would be very high, as well as the reliability. John Mortensen and I kind of tested that theory out. He has the app for the one north of Issaquah, and he tested it out. And to get to his location to another location, it was like, we'll be there in 10 to 30 minutes. Like it was very easy to just grab it. Scalability would probably be quite low. Once Metro sets their programs up, they're pretty solid. Of course, they put in a lot of time at the beginning to make sure that what they're putting into place is the right thing for the community, which means that equity concerns are quite low because Metro also puts a lot of thought into those factors as well.
Just so everybody knows, it takes Metro about 4 years to change a program for a bus.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I didn't know that. That's longer than I was hoping. So looking at the timeline, so the reason why we put 2026 plus is because Metro has a bi-yearly budgeting process, much like what Issaquah is going to be entering into soon. So the next budgeting cycle, yeah.
I'll wait till you have it.
Okay, thanks. The next budgeting cycle, well, the discussions will be had and set in November 2022, which is coming up fast, which will set the budget up for 2023, 2024. And then the next cycle would be November 2024, setting up the 2025 to 2026 cycle. Theoretically, the design for that would take place in 2025 and then implementation in 2026. That's kind of our reasoning. Good question.
Yeah, so a couple things. If we're considering options that involve the city paying, subsidizing it, is there an option to financially incentivize to that level, Metro coming earlier?
That is a great question, and I think that we would have to re-enter those discussions with Metro, and they're pretty resistant at this point to even think about it. But I think that might be.
And the other thing is that you got to assume Metro has done some level of analysis on ridership to come to that decision. I know as we just heard, getting drivers is a challenge, but as we know, also ridership is still relatively low. So to me, that's in a way them saying we're not actually expecting a lot of users until later. We're expecting a slow recovery. So, are we kind of starting to head a direction towards providing a service that even Metro is thinking, well, we're not going to have enough utilization for?
Yeah, that's all. Yes. Yeah, you described it very well.
I have a question about the fare. Is this, since it's KC Metro, like this option, would they be eligible for like the reduced fare programs, et cetera, that they have? Do you know if the kids riding free option would cover this as well?
If that goes through, which is I think up for decision soon, yeah, they're very good about implementing because their Orca program is supposed to be all one together. And I see John. Oh, sorry.
Let's let John go first.
Okay.
And Christy, from that side, if you could raise a little bit your voice when you speak, that would help with the sound. Thank you.
I was going to add, when John and I met with King County Metro, the two biggest things, well, the number one reason why they said no pilots for now was they did not have enough staff to take on new pilots. And then when John and I were talking to them, we were trying to come up with a solution to it. And we said, well, what if we take care of all the administrative work, do all the setup work for you, and that way all you'd have to do is provide a shuttle and a driver. And Metro said it might be challenging because, like Dave said, there's a shortage of drivers. And so that's a little bit of extra history that Metro had with why they're not doing shuttles at this point. But the number one reason is they don't have the staff capacity to take on another pilot project. And even if they did, they probably wouldn't have the drivers to staff it.
Yeah. So kind of similar to Micah's point that he was making, as I'm looking at these options, before you jump in and explain more, I'm wondering if we have data on the number of residents in both of those neighborhoods, if we've surveyed them, if we understand kind of the trends in terms of the times of when they would need such service, and then also just looking at what is the city's expectation on return on investment, right? Because we have many other neighborhoods as well that while they may not be as steep, may still desire the same service. And so understanding what that scalability is. So it's hard for me to give input without having the data behind it. And I also, would want to know how recent was the data. So I think we started having these conversations or just applied for the grant back in 2017. And as we all know, everything has changed. So.
And I guess just to build off that a little bit more, I'm interested to see the cost for the city per ride, instead of just the cost to the user, right? I don't know what that 100K is spread out over or 800K is spread out over.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I know the 200 bus route, when it first came to fruition, was funded by the Highlands development, and that enables just very basic, but it still wasn't enough to be fully supportable to the community. Very expensive.
So thank you for that, because that helps me. How much does the city fund a certain percentage of the bus? If we want more bus routes, the city funds the bus routes, or how does that get you as far as what the cost to the city would be for the bus routes?
I don't have that information actually. John might, but as far as I know, I don't think so. But I'll let John speak to that.
I don't know. I have an answer to that either.
I haven't heard of that. I'll put it that way. It's not come across my radar.
So, did you have another question?
No, go ahead.
I think those were some of my very questions. I'm gonna maybe suggest we put that in the bucket of like, let's let him proceed and then kind of come back to that, because I think that may be some of the very substance of the discussion we may end up getting into amongst us. So why don't you go ahead and carry on, if that's all right. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll be able to provide a little bit of what you're asking for, but yeah, you'll see. Yeah. So moving on to this second option, so investment into a third-party system. So to give a little bit of context in it before I go through how we analyzed it, we've been able to talk to, I've been able to talk to several cities across the U.S., multiple operators, and just try to get as much information about what it looks modernly to run one of these services as a third party. So what I've come across is basically at this point, it's about $85 to $115 an hour to run a private shuttle. That includes cost of driver, gasoline, maintenance, all those different things. Thankfully, we do have a local example in the Highlands Shuttle system. I was able to have multiple chats with Lyft Tango, which was the provider that they were planning on going through, and for two 14-passenger vehicles, they pitched them, which would run on basically a flex route, which would be a kind of a solid route with the option of door-to-door within a certain, I don't know, you could make it a quarter mile, you could make it 200 feet, whatever you wanted to do, but that's kind of the flex route. They pitched Highlands $470,976 per year. So almost $500,000 for
Two shuttles.
For two shuttles that would run
8-hour shift or?
Thank you. Yeah, and that's on a limited hour basis. So they pitched them Monday through Thursday during peak times, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Friday and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 10, sorry, I keep getting these numbers wrong. Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then Sunday is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So this system is basically Monday through Thursday, peak hours, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, most of the day for those who wanted to use it. That breaks down to $19,624 per month. And yeah, so that's kind of what they were looking at. So the route would have run like a dumbbell, as he said it, is kind of around that loop at the top of Highlands, down to Swedish, and then back, and then maybe two vehicles constantly moving during that time. And then if someone said, hey, can you come to my door, there would be that option within their app.
Question?
Yeah.
Do you know what the ridership was, the shuttles?
I did have that data. I would have to go and find it again. The interest was high. I will say that the interest, they did conduct surveys in the Highlands neighborhoods, and they got more than a positive. I think it was 60 or 70% positivity. People, yes, I would love to use this. Sometimes I want to go down to the bar or whatever, and I don't want to walk back up that hill, that type of thing. So there was a robust desire within the community, but when it came to the Highlands Council, they said that's a lot of money, and then COVID hit, and then it was just kind of all that. So pretty much.
Just, could you say the monthly number again?
Yeah, sorry. So the monthly number is per vehicle.
Okay, got it.
$19,624. Yes.
So it's more like 40.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, just under 40,000 a month.
Oh, I know you just said this, but so like two shuttles would circle in the same route, and then the other shuttles would be on demand.
So there's only two shuttles apart. So that $500,000 is only two shuttles total. That would have run, concurrently.
Yeah, but then like another like option would potentially be like people could just order on demand, like the shuttle to come pick them up from their house.
That is another type of model, yes. And another thing that I will add is in chatting with one operator company that Liftanger was going to use and do use for their shuttle systems across the world actually now, is that there is a cost difference between running it all the time and doing peak hours. So thinking about that driver shortage that we've been talking about, it's really hard to find drivers to drive all day. It's even harder to find them just to do peak times.
Yes.
Because it's part-time work. So that's another factor.
Dave has a question. Let's go ahead and unmute Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Dave, I'm going to mute you now.
Thank you. Question was the figure you gave, which
Did we lose him?
Can you hear me?
Lost you.
You cut out there for a minute, Dave. Go ahead.
Okay, so that's approximately 20,000 per shuttle per month. That's only what we used to call connector service, which is basically it only runs in the morning, only runs in the afternoon. It's not all day, and it's only 4 days a week. Is that correct? And that's also only for the Highlands. Doesn't take care of Talus or downtown.
Yes, yeah. This is Highlands specific, and that amount does kind of nestle within that 400,000 to 800,000 would be cost added. We don't know, it'd be more gas, I guess, and gas costs.
So the other difficulty is, in order to make that work for meeting transportation, you'd actually have to have 4 vans to do that work, 2 up in the Highlands and 2 up in Talus, as well as being able to take care of downtown to shuttle to and from the transit center. So I'm just trying to get this figure in my head. So 440,000 just for the 2 shuttle buses to take care of the Highlands per year, correct?
471,000 about.
471,000. I know that the city used to pay 400,000 for the 200 a year, but that was full service from 6 in the morning up to about 7 or 8 at night, and that was just one bus. The other comment I just have to, please forgive me. I've been in this for a long time, and there is such a severe shortage of drivers that I'm worried that any company that promises that they can get drivers, I'm suspect. I'm suspect from the get-go. Thank you for letting me make the comments and ask the questions.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm glad you picked on that driver issue because I'm concerned about that. And we have shuttles at work and we have problems with them showing up. How would you collect the money for that? And what's the city administration cost estimated to be? You say moderate, but what does that actually mean?
Oh, yeah. So I'll start with the city admin question first. So this is the cost of resources. The cost the monetary cost we roll into that high cost to city per year. City admin categories are like those resources, the number of staff dedicated, that type of thing. Yeah.
So before you get to the how the user actually pay for that, cost of city per year. So we're talking. We've heard 2 shuttles. We've heard 4 shuttles. I didn't quite hear from you. Are you proposing 2 shuttles at $471K plus city cost, or is that including city cost? Or are you proposing 4 at whatever cost? Is that including city cost?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the 4. So as far as our analysis at this point, we believe that if we were to pursue this at that, roughly $500,000 mark, it could be higher now because this is 2020 numbers. Inflation's gone up, so it might be higher. And so the what was I? Go ahead.
Yeah, you're just saying about how many shuttles?
Oh, how many shuttles? Yes. So yeah, that is. We were thinking 2. Because of state law with Metro, we can't provide a shuttle that interferes with any other Metro line. So it's actually good that they're shifting the 554 up to Gilman from Newport, because that would give us the autonomy to create a system that would wrap in and out of Squak into the central business district over to Talus. And so we think that we probably could make a 2 shuttle system work. It would, of course, be better with 3 or 4, but that would have to be a discussion. So we're thinking about kind of the base, like if we can get 2 shuttles, what would it be? And then we could go from there. Of course, we would have to have a company come in, such as Liptango, for example, to come in and analyze that for us. So, yeah.
With the shuttle option, actually with all the options, what is the, like a fixed route bus, I can like put my bike on the front. What are the options for that with any of these?
Funny you should ask that. I thought that yesterday afternoon. So I think the shuttles that you can purchase can include the bike accessory.
Probably a small cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that would definitely be a priority since we want more bikers. And, yeah, great question.
And well, in that same vein of sustainability, reducing carbon, et cetera, would these, and this is probably too far in the future, but would these be conventional, like combustion gas engines, and we're using gasoline, or is it EVs? Do they make EV vans? I should know that.
That's a great question, and it just kind of depends on which direction, what the budget is, what the consultant would say, all of those different factors. I would love electric, but is it feasible right now? Do we have enough charging in Issaquah to handle it? Like all of those different. Yeah. Cool. So I think we've pretty much covered all this, but I'll walk you through the different factors here too. In analyzing through these criteria, cost of route to user per ride, $0 to $2 is the amount that has been quoted to me multiple times. If you go higher than $2 on a private shuttle, people start to not use it, which is very interesting. That's what kind of the national data shows. Cost of city per year, $400,000 to $800,000, roughly. City administration, we would of course be partners with this third party. They would do most of the work, but of course there would be some, marketing work. There would be, and I'm sure some back end, communication and collaboration to get the word out and make sure that, everything is being paid for. I will go back to cost to user per ride because I didn't address that before. A lot of these companies are app based, but they provide a secondary, dial a ride, basically. Call and say, I live here, can you pick me up? That's pretty ubiquitous across the landscape. We think that convenience would be high because you would know where the shuttles are. They're running on the same track theoretically, unless we were doing on demand, which the problem with on demand is the cost would be higher because you would be paying for drivers sitting there instead of driving around. So there's that cost benefit element. Reliability would also be very high because it's only a couple miles away at most. So you would know that it would be on its way. Scalability is moderate. It's not possible to kind of flex those different boundaries and what the coverage might be, but of course there would be some work that would have to go into it. Equity concerns are low in our opinion because it's a city run or a city contracted system. We would make sure to address all of those necessary equity issues that would come up. Would be a very high priority. And then finally, timeline. We're thinking 2023 plus at the minimum because we would have to go through the process of finding a company to collaborate with, getting those studies done for the data that we would like to see what the feasibility is, and then probably by mid or late next year we would actually have something to get going. If everything fell into place, including can we find shuttles, can we find drivers, can we find all of those things. So any questions on that? Great. Moving on to our third option, which is a partnership with Uber and Lyft. So we've had the opportunity to chat with both Uber and Lyft about a hypothetical system or a hypothetical partnership. So I will start off with Uber because Uber and Lyft have two different models that they're offering. So I'll tell you about both of them. So the first one with Uber was able to give us some data. They like to play pretty tight to the chest with their data and ridership, but they were able to tell us that on average there are 6,000 Uber rides per month. That's just across
in the city.
In Issaquah, which I was very surprised about.
6,000 a month.
6,000 a month, and that they controlled for the city, and then they ran the data. It was 6,000 on average.
Arriving from the airport to
Yeah. And internally, those rides, if you're going just inside, they're about 1 to 3 miles on average.
So that's 6,000 internal rides, not people coming from the airport.
Well, let's consider that it's going to be the best look for Uber, and this is no fault on Uber, on any company that provides that business, to have the highest ridership possible in a conversation like this.
Yes.
I would, whatever the broader assumption you can
I
make.
believe, yes, I believe it was
And
start.
or-
It was start and or end.
And
Yes.
that would be something that,
Yes. Agreed.
They give you the data on the times, like any
No.
Okay.
No, they did not. Yeah, they can only per company policy only give out so much information until you enter into talks with them seriously.
talks or a contract.
like a memorandum
Talks.
of understanding.
Like
MOU.
basically, and I'll get to that in a second actually.
That includes like Uber, food, deliveries, groceries.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think it was just ridership.
That could be 6,000 a month.
Yes. So some possible program options that they pitched to us were subsidized. They had subsidized voucher programs. So basically they would reduce, so on average in Issaquah, the cost of a ride, and they calculated for, I think it was Talus to the high school, if I'm not mistaken. It was around $12.50 without peak or anything like that. So just kind of base. So what they do is they offer voucher programs, and this cost would come from the city. The city would basically subsidize rides down to $2, so that no matter what, if you're inside the city and going from point to point, not outside, like you said, you would be able to get it down to $2, just like that private shuttle option. In Arizona, there's a specific city, which I don't remember which one it was, but there's a city that had a former shuttle system, and they decided we would rather do something else. And so they approached Uber, and they were able to put in virtual bus stops, including posting up QR codes, which people would scan with their phone or the app itself, and it would auto-populate the app and basically automatically give them that voucher down to $2 as long as the start and end point was within the city that they were operating.
But they have to go to a stop and stop from their house.
Yes, yeah, to or from, yeah, basically, or I guess it would be at the point of origin, yeah. There's also the option to restrict the length of subsidized rides, for example. So just to kind of make sure that people aren't using it to go to Factoria, they would restrict it to 6 miles or 3 miles or whatever would
Or
be
within the
feasible
city.
within the city, yeah.
Within the city.
Correct.
And then what happens? They just like dump you off the side of the road, or like?
No, it would be like, you can't do that with this.
Oh,
So,
okay.
like,
with
go
the
back to the
subsidy.
regular app.
Okay.
Yeah. They can also create geofence zones, going back to the scooters. The geofence zones that could also trigger those subsidies. So they kind of pitched us all these different ideas to kind of craft what kind of program they have. As far as costs, the city would only be responsible for those subsidies and then the marketing to make sure the community knows about what's going on. Getting into the best practices side of things, they said that they would do a lot of testing in advance. Their words. There'd be like a 3 to 4 week startup time post contract signing. So when they get close to the agreement, Uber triggers kind of a setup phase. So that was kind of that like weird murky place there. So like if it seems like we're very serious and we're getting to that point that we're about to sign, that would trigger Uber to start setting things up. Then once the contract is signed, they would begin testing. Then there would be a soft launch so that some people would be able to use it if they knew about it, for example. And then there'd be a marketing phase, and then they would do a hard, actual formal launch.
They would market it themselves, or
we would do the marketing. So we would be a collaboration, yeah. They would provide the materials, and we would make sure that it gets to the right places.
Are any of these, okay, similar with the scooters?
Yeah.
Where that was like seasonality played into that? Does that play into any of this?
Shouldn't, yeah. I don't think so. There is that limiting factor of drivers. Granted, drivers are, they're a little bit more popular west of here, so that would be, there would be some limiting factors there, which I have more data about that from Lyft's side, so I'll get to that in a second. In fact, I guess we could move on to Lyft if no one has any questions about Uber.
I just equity concerns was moderate.
Yes.
I did have one other question about, you said they would do a test phase, and then presumably if they're gonna do that test, then they're gonna was there a discussion about a typical length of the contract? In years?
I don't think we touched on that at any point. I think it's probably a formal year contract. That's usually what happens with stuff like this. And then we revisit it every year type of thing to make sure that it's going on. But that's also might also be thinking of scooters. So yeah, so going on to Lyft, we were able to get a lot more data from Lyft. So in Issaquah, the average ride costs $13.50, so it's a little higher with Lyft. The average estimated time of arrival once you push the button that you want to ride is 10 to 20 minutes. So there's less drivers out here, which makes sense. There's less demand. And currently, under the Lyft rides, there's currently 2,400 Lyft rides per month. So that is substantially less, but also Lyft is not as popular of an app as Uber, so that actually makes a lot of sense. And then they were able to provide specific data. An average of 260 monthly rides begin or end in Squak and Talus. So we do have that very specific data. So there is some ridership, some demand from just people who have the app and want to go places.
But they didn't give you the hours.
They did not give me the hours.
Right, and they could still be going to the airport.
They could still be going to the airport, yes. Yeah,
Okay, they're not just within the city, is what I'm saying.
not necessarily, no. So then moving into the possible options that Lyft has given us. So they have a thing called Lyft Pass, which is organizational. So they work with organizations, businesses, and or cities to cover all or portion of the cost per ride. So they already kind of have that type of program set. And they gave me a specific example, Summit, New Jersey. They have a system in place that is really, really targeted. So it's a to and from their local train station, because this is New Jersey, you're commuting into New York City, to and from the local train station within Summit. There's a limit of 2 rides, subsidized rides per day. So theoretically, home to train station to home. And for those who pay a train station monthly parking pass, it's free to them. So it kind of subsidizes that. On the other hand, for those without a parking pass, it's $2 per ride. And so that system, hopefully I'm speaking clearly enough. So there's a train station, people who live within the city, you can't like live outside of the city. Both one of the points of origin or destination has to be the train station, and the other one has to be within the city of Summit. Okay, just want to make sure that it's clear. And then Lyft basically told us that they could currently support a partnership with a cap of 500 subsidized rides per month, which is higher than even the ridership of Lyft per month, double. So that's also an interesting factor. Any questions about Lyft? Cool. So then looking at how we analyzed it all, it's already been an hour. So looking at, yeah.
So they were, was Lyft also quoting the non-peak hour rate of $13.50?
Yeah, it's their average. Yeah, it's like or it's either their average or their like base without the peak. I think it was that actually. Yeah. So using our criteria, cost of user per ride, set $0 to $2. We can set that whatever we want it to be, depending on how much we want to subsidize. Cost of this to the city per year, we would say is moderate. We did some kind of back of the envelope calculations, and it seems to come out to around $50,000 to $100,000 per year. Of course, we would have to figure out exactly how much that would be, and that 600 rides per month, I believe, pencils out to within that number, if I remember right. City admin time, also moderate, kind of the same reasons as we had for the third-party system Shuttle. That's because, the marketing, we have to have the collaborations and make sure that people are getting the rides they need, et cetera. Convenience would be high because, it's door-to-door service. I saw that too.
Okay.
It's probably haunted in here, let's be honest. And then reliability is moderate, just because the drivers are probably coming in from outside. Generally, there's someone to come pick you up, but you never know. It's capitalism at its finest, I guess you could say. And then we have scalability. Scalability is super high. We can flex it as much as we want in the future. If we wanted to cover the entirety of Issaquah with this subsidy, we could easily do that. And then equity concerns, of course, moderate. With any sort of issues, and this, again, come back to scooters, it's kind of the same issues there. It's app-based. Yes, they have a phone number. It's kind of clunky. Sometimes it's kind of clunky. I think they run it as well as they can. And there's always customer service, but there's always kind of that barrier that if you don't have a smartphone, then you're probably less likely to try to use an Uber, because what happens when you get to your destination? You don't have a landline to use. That type. The other piece here is the timeline. This could happen very fast if we pull the trigger on it. Sorry. if we went ahead with it. So we could get this going by the end of the year, theoretically. It's a pretty quick option. So with that, I'll switch to this screen, which kind of shows everything. And before I hand it off to Cynthia, just wanted to remind everyone, what we're looking for this evening. So first, we're looking for any changes to that evaluation. Are we missing anything? We really want to know if any criteria is missing, if you think any of the criteria is a little bit much, that type of thing. We'd love to hear feedback on that. Pros and cons of that first mile, last mile option. We'd love to talk through what it might look like, what your feelings on it are.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by first mile, last mile.
Oh, sorry. So you're right. I forgot to define that. So for one of those transportation players, it's always in my brain, so I assume everyone knows. So first mile, last mile refers to the ability of people to get to transit, basically. So one of the big issues with transit planning, especially if you're moving into more of a frequency model and less of a coverage model, is you might have really great service from your transit center into Seattle, for example. But if you can't get there very easily,
right,
you probably will use your car, basically. And that also comes into like paratransit type of things with people with disabilities. That's also a first mile, last mile option for people who can't drive or are unable to afford a car. That's also kind of falls within that definition of first mile, last mile. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Great. And then finally, we would love to ultimately kind of we'd love you to make a collective recommendation, or at least somewhat of a distilled down recommendation that through all these discussions this evening. So yeah.
All right, ready for, I was just gonna make.
Oh.
Well, I wanted to ask your patience because were you finished?
I think that's it.
Well, I
Thank
want to ask you to indulge some, because I actually thought a lot about this. We talked about this a little bit, but about how I wanted to do this, because I think there's a lot of really great minds at this table, and I think 2 years on video has made it hard to have some of these debates. But I also think that sometimes that we're given that the agenda sometimes don't really lend themselves to a deep dive. And so I wanted to try something today, and I also discussed it with the Vice Chair, Julian. And so if you'll indulge me, I had kind of a way I wanted to facilitate this, and then it can be a free-for-all later, and we still have lots of time. So what I wanted to do is that, and I hadn't even thought about, I had thought about your question, but I think there's a question of, like, do we even think, is there enough service demand to do this? And I think that we should table that for the moment, but I think we should circle back to it. And I hate those words, circle back to it and crosswalk. And I think that we should not forget about that. And I think if we want to have a discussion about that, that may be a layer, because I've had some questions about that as well, because we don't have a good sense of the scope of the problem. But one thing I wanted to do is go backwards, and thank you for moving to this slide. Well, I want to do two things. The first is I want you to, I'm going to ask a question, and I just want you to jot your answer down. I don't want you to share it quite yet. And the first one is this last question of, so let's table the discussion about whether we should be moving forward with anything, like if we think the demand is high enough, and I think this has been, the way I understand it, it's been discussed at council for a very long time, and they really want to go further on this. So in a way, that part isn't even necessarily what they're asking of us, but I think it still means we can answer that question if we want. But I want you to just take the three options that we've discussed at length and just jot down the order of priority for what you would pick if it were up to you making a recommendation by yourself. So I just want you to take a moment to think about the order that you would say is the answer to that question. Don't tell us what you think, but what?
Okay, I won't say what I think. There's an option to choose two. Okay, never
Just
mind.
put them in order, just like your first choice, your second choice, your third
And
choice.
so do we divide up Uber or Lyft, or we're just gonna assume that's just one option?
So
Yeah, I would just do the private ride share as one.
So I understand why you want to table that first part, but I think that ties into the equity concerns.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna, no, it's okay. It's fine, because this is, we're all figuring this out. And so I'm absolutely, but what I wanted to do is, we're gonna do it again. And I want to discuss the criteria. And so you'll be coming back to it, and hopefully I'll get at what your point is. And if not, then we'll visit it again if that's okay. So go ahead and write down your number one choice. I guess I get to do that too. And then I want to talk about the criteria and what we think is the most important, not just how each thing scores on it, but anyway, so I'm going to write mine down.
I have a really quick question
Uh-huh.
about, is there a budget for like how much the city can like allot to this project? Because if it's like 2 million, then that like doesn't affect my options, but if it's like 200,000, then that does affect my options.
I think for now, let's just make it a non-issue, and we'll just say it could be anything. Yeah, go more for the service.
Is it fair to say that the council will have a budget cycle prior to this being implemented, and they could budget for it if they were convinced that it made sense?
That's
Is that,
the goal, I believe.
so there isn't a budget because they haven't gotten to budgeting that cycle yet?
Yeah, it would imagine the cost.
Did I have that right, that the bus is not budgeted because we don't have the budget numbers, or was it really a zero cost to the city?
And that's you, yeah, one day.
It's truly zero cost to the city, the metro option, I assume.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's a time delay. It can't happen right away.
This feels like it's math problems, like in school, that you had to like, really it's real life now.
That asked a question, but I won't ask you yet as far as
Is it really
my option.
already written down their options?
Yeah.
Because I realized that I'm having a difficult time because there are some unanswered questions about the, yeah, but I'm gonna do it anyway. Okay, when she comes back, we will say what our, do we want to take two? No, we don't usually take breaks. We just got right to the point where.
It was a lot, I threw a lot at you, I recognize that.
Why don't we take two, and then we'll come back, and I'm gonna just ask everyone to say what they, what
Don't
they
talk
said.
about
Don't talk about it. You want us
Oh,
to
great.
say?
Well, that's a great question.
it.
All right, so we are just coming back from a 2-minute break. And at this point, we're gonna go around and just say which option was your first choice. And I'm just gonna make a check mark for everyone who said option 1 was their first choice. Okay,
Oh, wait.
is option 1 your first choice?
Only with the caveat that we have 3, because option 1's free, why not have the other one as a supplement? Like, one could be a backbone.
Is
the other
number
could be-
one your first choice?
That's a good point.
I think I can go to 3.
So I'm sorry?
No.
Okay. Okay. What did I write? Okay, great, okay. Was option 2 anyone's first choice? Okay, was not my first choice, okay. Okay, was option 3 anyone's first choice? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. Is that 1, 2, 3? How many?
Oh, wait, and I took vote for option 3, not 2. Oops.
Oh, so no one's first choice was option 2? Okay,
And the reason I went for 3, because 1's free, so why not do 1 anyway?
okay.
And
We
two-
can always
three
do it
provide
in
the next one.
2026.
So I'm learning as we go, and I'm not gonna ask everyone to tell me their second and third choice, because I think that's less interesting. What I'd rather do is have the people who chose each of them. Now, so the total score for first choice is number 1, there were 3 people. Nobody had number 2 as the first choice, and 5 people. Do we have 8 people? 1, no, you voted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, I counted it.
So-
What about David's vote?
Oh, gosh, David, thank you. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. David, are you tracking? And did you have can you tell us what your first choice was?
Are you still there, David? Unmute. Most famous word in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Well, if he comes back, we'll note his,
Okay.
so we had 3 and 4, and nobody had, number 2 as the first choice. So how about someone who said number 1? I'm gonna give it to you, Tom. Go ahead and tell us why you thought number 1 was your first choice. You're just dying to share, so please.
Well, I thought one is free, and so regardless if you did the other 2, why not do 1 anyway? And so I was thinking that I like the Uber, or let's just call it Uber, because like Uber, or like Google, it means everything. Because that can be like a feeder line into a baseline. I thought, what a great option, less expensive, and it can very well pinpoint where needs are fitting into number 1.
So I want to make kind of a point of order, I guess. I'm very glad you brought that up. I doubt anyone here is opposed to 1. My guess is really we're all thinking stopgap measure, whether we're directly thinking that or not, and that's a very different question. It's do we want, in 2026, do we want to try and push for that? And if so, do we want to provide some solution between now and then?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because if we do Uber now for a couple of years, we can kind of get some data, where are people going to? And then I could take number 1 and say, here's the route that we want.
And you could start really small too and just do a very small pilot.
And also there's that risk for the option 1 that it might never happen too, because of the shortage of people, the lack of funds maybe that Metro has. So we don't know if ridership and transit is going to pick up and they're going to have more dollars to spend time with us. So that's another reason to go with number 3.
But interesting, because I was just looking today at the Amtrak numbers, the Sounder numbers, and bus and link numbers, and they're all NIPS.
They are
around there,
NIPS.
so, yeah.
Okay. But that 214 bus is still pretty empty.
Well, actually, that's when I take every morning, and it's getting full. And the fact that Cork went home the other day was the first day, like it was packed with same people. And I was like, this is awesome.
Oh, because I
Great
was,
direction.
yeah, I take it on Thursdays.
Okay.
Today, yeah, so anyway,
But it may depend on the time too. So.
right
where
now,
the-
I'm like 7:30.
That's really the next piece of things.
Oh.
David, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, and I think the question that Cynthia was asking is, of the three options, which was your first choice?
So my first option is wait for the Metro shuttle. I guess you all figured I'd probably say that. And I'll tell you why. I think that on the looking at the cost per user, one of the things that they,
You cut out, Dave.
sorry, there's some feedback from this, trying to do this on the phone. I get not only your voices, but I get the voice of the whoever that is, trying to tell me what I can do and what I can't do. So how are these people going to pay for this on their own? The cost to the user, how are they going to pay? It's going to be in addition to an Orca card, correct?
For the Metro option, it would likely be built into the Orca system, and then the
third party and Uber Lyft is going to be an additional cost, correct?
Outside the Orca system, that is correct.
Correct. So what it would be for the Metro shuttle for the transit rider is going to be simply a transfer. So they begin their trip in the Highlands or up in wherever they begin their trip. And then at the transit center, it's simply a transfer. So there's no additional cost to them. So this would be an additional cost to them. It's also going to be an additional cost to the city, both the shuttle third party and moderate cost to the city per year. No cost to the city if we wait. But my pick is to wait until the Metro shuttle. And I don't think it'll be 2026. I think it'll be before that.
Thank you. So I think it's interesting that we had 4 and 4. And I think you make a really good point about the point of order. I wanted to give anyone else an opportunity to share why they put what they did that hasn't been brought up yet.
I should mention I'm specifically not for 4. I'm not just for 1. It sounded like you were for both, as you pointed out, but I'm hesitant, not 4, sorry, 3. I'm hesitant on 3.
I'm
one, but I'm not just 1 and, trying to figure out a stopgap. I'm hesitant on 3.
Okay. And did you have anything to add about why you were for number 1? That hasn't already been said.
For 1, no.
Anybody else who voted for pitched 1 want to share anything that hasn't been talked about already?
Just in terms of 4-1, it's a service we're paying for as citizens. So I think it's important to continue to advocate for service from them for our community. Also, I voted for 1 because not having the data of really understanding what the ridership is fully. That's another factor. And then just understanding the cost to the city is a pretty big investment. And I think what we do for these neighborhoods, we need to, as a community, also be prepared to do for other neighborhoods.
Okay, thanks. This is now I want to give the opportunity for those who voted for 3, advocated for 3, to share about why they thought that. Joseph, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. I guess like on the separate like reasoning, I was gonna ask, so for option 1, would marketing fall on Metro or would it fall on the Squak?
Yeah, that's our understanding, that the marketing would come from Metro side.
I guess that the main reason why I chose, or not the main reason, but like a separate reason why I chose 3 that wasn't exactly mentioned yet was that I think that it would be easier to market like a brand partnership with Uber and Lyft and get the word out to like people so that it would actually be implemented better like within the community. So I think that having that alternative would be used more effectively like in Issaquah. Especially since like it's like I feel like people like locally don't necessarily have like as great a perception of like sound transit as compared to like Uber, honestly. So I feel like it would just be a lot easier to like announce like, oh, it's supposed to like partnering with Uber or Lyft compared to like, oh, it's supposed to partnering with like sound transit because we're always partnering with sound transit, honestly.
Interesting. Do you
Yeah, I chose 3 purely for if we're looking at, and like I think that I would want to have more of a broader discussion, I guess, to make this cement my choice about like like the time aspect of like this would be the quickest or almost the quickest. Sorry, I cannot actually see from this far back. Option, and like we could use it as a stopgap. Fully on board with like if we just want something here and now that isn't necessarily seem too costly, then and then wait for Metro. I'm not sure. This is probably something that like for city council to decide if like would that open us to lawsuits because you have contracts in there and like would they know that beforehand? Or maybe would they know that this may not be a forever thing, but that is a concern of mine. But I just appreciated the amount of like scalability and flexibility that could go into it versus with going the Metro route, it is a bit of our like hands off the wheel. Sorry that pun. Like where like it is kind of purely in their hands. I know we get say and like they have to run data and stuff, but this just feels like we would be a bit more. We could do more things or tailor it more to what the city wanted. Also, this is a bit of an assumption, but would gift cards work for like if you get like an Uber Lyft, like load money onto your app? And I don't know if you can do that you can load money on Orca Pass, but I haven't heard of anyone giving Orca gift cards. Maybe that needs to be a thing. But,
that should totally be a thing.
But and so that's like one aspect to come at it with of like.
Thanks. Did you vote for number 3? Do you want to share?
I don't have anything more to add.
Okay. I'm going to say that I voted for it only because, and I really appreciated, Micah, the way you talked about this, and I don't disagree with you. The reason I asked the question about the length of the contract is because if we can't do anything till 2026 anyway, then some of my concerns about equity and access, we can't deliver to those folks now anyway. And so we could get a whole lot of kind of strategic, get people in the habit of, like actually, so somebody who can't get to the first mile isn't going to get any miles on public transportation, right? But, they may take the airport, the the ride, the public transit to the airport if they can get that first mile, right? And so there's a lot of strategic benefit of the juicing the system and getting people to do it. And then as long as the length of the contract, and then just think if we got enough data and we really understood it, then we could really use that presumably to define the need. And so the question is, and if the information, so I think of it like when I said this, when I was thinking pilot with the intention of a much more equitable long-term rollout. That's all I wanted to say. I think everybody got a chance to say why they thought what they thought. I'm not even going to try to take time to go into the next options, but I do want to spend a few minutes, and now we seem like we had all the time in the world. We started this just after 6. Go ahead.
Can I share why I don't think 3 is a good option?
Oh, please. Yes, sure. Yes. Thank you. Very helpful.
So, you're talking about marketing, Uber and Lyft, and that actually really highlights a point that we haven't discussed too much. I think we've kind of indirectly hit on, which is the audience, the users can be completely different. And the people that are going to get the Uber marketing are not the same people that are going to get the Metro marketing. Like, there's probably no overlap. And so that kind of brings up this, like, would this end up basically being the city is subsidizing rides for the people who least need rides subsidized? And can we use that money, because set amount of total money, can we use that money for something else? So I think that's something that's a really good question that we need to go and answer. I also a little concerned about the precedents for it. The precedents it would create. It could be the sort of service, once it gets there, every neighborhood's like, why don't I get it? And you're just going to have this running through, and then it starts to expand, and all of a sudden we're paying for trips to Bellevue or wherever, and they should be paying for trips to come here. Well, it only goes in, I can't leave. And then at some point, the way I wouldn't have as many of those reservations is if it's very limited in what that pilot is, right? So looking at these as comparable options, what are we trying to solve? If the Metro service is a solution, what about the restrictions that can be put in place with the Uber-Lyft partnership could replicate that solution specifically, as opposed to just having it open? At least that way, we can say, we are not creating some precedents. This is truly a stopgap measure. Yes, it will provide the city good data, but it's truly a stopgap measure for a planned solution that is Metro. That's my hesitation.
But can't we, do we have to subsidize everyone? So if people have higher incomes and still want to use it, maybe they just pay for it, directly. Is there a way to limit the subsidy?
Then you have to have, you're giving your income information to Uber, and I think that might make that moderate city administration very helpful.
I think we already have that, because anyone up there can call Uber and get a ride down to the transit center anytime they want. Right. So that's no different than what we have today.
So, right.
What?
Yeah, well, but who would do it?
No, you could call an Uber and get a ride to the transit center.
Yeah, but why would you do that if you had the dollars to pay to get to the transit center? You probably have the dollars to pay to get to Seattle or Bellevue too. So if you needed an Uber to get to Bellevue, you're not gonna stop at the transit.
Right, so you need, even if you're well, then the fact that it's $2 to get to the transit center is an incentive.
So maybe.
Even if you don't need
But
it.
that's an Uber to get to the transit center. That's very different than an Uber to get from anywhere in Issaquah to Talus, or Talus anywhere in Issaquah. That's my point about, is this a very different service we're talking about providing, or are we talking about providing a service in lieu of that shuttle?
So, question, are you Going back with Uber, are we talking about point-to-point destination or point to a point that would be on a route or a point to a transit stop or transit center that they would do?
I don't think we know. I think this is too,
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
The way-
because if somebody wants to go to Target, you want them.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
which-
goal, and maybe I'll clarify that. I know we've talked specifically about the transit center that's come up over and over. That is the priority of administration to get people to transit, but we're not limiting it to that at this point. We could, the virtual bus stop idea, for example, with Uber, you could put one up at the Safeway, or you could put one up at the QVC, or, you could put them in different places. And then,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, it's coming back to Mike's question is, because I was thinking, kind of going full circle in a way, well, if we had a metro bus that did a trunk route and the other one's fed into that, not necessarily doing, like paratransit where it goes point to point to take people to very specific locations. To me, if we do the Uber, does the Uber in a way have to stay on a certain route ring in a way, as opposed to just going point to point? So people would be going all over doing this as opposed to going and then the point locations similar on a bus route that would somewhat simulate like a bus route as opposed to
I don't,
physical bus
I
route.
think Uber and Lyft are all point to point. I don't think they,
Yeah, and so they're point to point, but I'm wondering if we did the Uber option, would Uber have to follow some sort of like preset path
You find the plans for.
for if they're gonna be subsidized, they drop on a preset path as opposed
The
to.
way I've seen subsidized from just what I've read on what other things have done, there's lots of different ways Uber gets subsidized. There are a lot of restrictions on like, you can only start in this space, you can only end in this space, or rides under a certain distance, but I've not seen anything that turns Uber into a shuttle. Like a true, you can only start from here and end here or on these certain stops. But I think you can do a pretty narrow geographic restriction.
The other disadvantage to using Uber or Lyft is the fact that we're dependent upon the Uber Lyft drivers being available at a certain amount of time, when people need them, like first thing in the morning. So who's gonna want to, as an Uber driver, you're not going to make as many dollars just driving around the city of Issaquah unless there's enough demand.
That would be where I guess the deal with the city with Uber drivers is to make sure they're not doing it like the Seattle Port or the
Seattle,
Seattle
yeah.
Airport or the
Right.
Squad Airport, where they'll make more.
which I assume would be the point of that soft launch period, is to try to get more drivers into the area. They do exist clearly, since there's 6,000 Uber and 2,400 Lyft, so they are around. But again, there's also that 10 to 20 minute waiting period, so they're around, but they're not here. So maybe that pilot, or not the pilot period, but the soft launch period might provide a little bit more incentive to bring.
It's a fascinating model, actually.
so I want to take a time out and do a time check real quick. So it's 7:40. I'm pretty committed to finishing as close to on time as possible. But here's what I think is happening. I think we're getting into the real essence, like some really interesting stuff. And the one thing we haven't done, which I think would actually add to the discussion, is talk about the criteria and how important. First of all, I think if there's any missing, I think we should talk about that. But I also think the criteria need to be weighted, and I don't think they're all created equal. And I'm very excited about the fact that I'm starting to change my mind about how I started, because I'm listening to all of you, and I'm starting to formulate kind of a higher level of sophistication in terms of like what I think that we should be, the feedback we should be, giving. But I feel like we're not quite there. And I want everyone to hold their thought for a second, and I want to ask, because I'm just not sure we keep rushing these things and we don't really get to finish the job. And this is the first time we've even heard about, this is the first time we've had really a discussion, it's just I heard about. So what I want to do is to take a moment to ask staff two things. One is, have we decided we aren't having an August meeting, or is that just a thought?
It is a thought.
Is that a, yeah? And then your timing on this, obviously it makes it harder to deploy in 2022 if we end up on that one, if we kicked it out on that. But I really think that having a discussion about the criteria would be extremely helpful to the decision makers. And I'll turn and look here. Do you feel like having a discussion about the criteria and the importance and our ranking of it would be, okay. And I think it might help us hone like an actual recommendation. So I feel like we're getting close, and we're not gonna do it in 10 minutes, and we had a couple other things we wanted to talk about. And so if it's okay with the timing on when you need this recommendation, and if an August meeting is still on the table, I would propose that we have some final thoughts. I had a couple things I wanted to go through with the work plan and the chair report and so forth, and finish on time. I'm wondering if that's acceptable to this group.
I'm wondering whether we can at least provide a recommendation that we are all or most of us are in favor of pursuing the metro option one way or the other.
Yes.
And if there's ways to accelerate it, we'd all.
So I think we should say, I, as the chair, would entertain a motion to take that stance and provide that as a formal recommendation.
Make a motion that we have the stance, the opinion that we're sharing with you, that we would like to pursue the metro option. And if there are opportunities to accelerate the timeline on that, we are interested in that as well.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Dave's got his hand up.
Oh, you know what, we didn't, I didn't ask for discussion or anything. Dave, what did you want to share?
I'm all in favor of the motion, and hopefully we'll be able to talk more about this when I can not have to. I feel really penalized out here. It's not my fault, and I just don't feel like I can be the proper help because I've got some really. Anyway, I agree with the motion.
Okay, thanks. So I don't think I called for discussion, but it didn't sound like okay. So nobody's opposed, the motion carries. And I too will be anxious to get Dave in the room to talk to us because as he pointed out, no one else has driven these routes and he knows better than anyone. So would it be fair to say that a discussion of the criteria will help us figure out what we recommend is a pilot / stopgap / shorter term alternative? Because I think we just got to the good stuff and the time is running out. Please.
Before you make that decision, I want to mention that I will be on vacation
Oh, crap.
next time. But, so that's also something to consider.
I was just gonna ask.
What is
if
the
you
word
could
for
give us
that?
Say again?
Yeah, we heard that.
It's the 18th. I will also be out.
I have a conflict too. August.
We're in August.
Good reason to not have August. Oh, my goodness.
Is there a possibility of finding a date that would work for us within the realm that we would need to like declare a special meeting?
Oh, that just takes a few.
We could do that. The only thing is try to gather the availability from everyone so we can get a good date for doing that.
Let me ask the question a different way. In the unlikely event that we can't find a date to have a special meeting or to move the August meeting because of the high number of absences on both staff and board, is September acceptable? Is that, because that's the risk we run. I mean, the other option is to keep at this.
I think I'd also ask it to Jonathan, Isabel. I know that the city's starting its budget season and
Y'all gonna be getting sleep.
yeah, and a delayed recommendation, what does that do in terms of discussion around the council table?
John, are you around?
I am, and I think in terms of the budget, as long as we get to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee as scheduled, that's really the big key in order to keep it up with the process.
Do you know off the top of your head when that's scheduled for?
I think it's October, but don't quote me on that yet.
I mean, it's very clear you've done a lot of work and research and conversations. I'm sure that we have a chance to support you in that.
So I think I'm hearing, and I'll just go back for just a moment and see if anyone has any last kind of minute thoughts, but I do want to be mindful of the time. What I'm hearing is we hope to have a special meeting in August that has high attendance, especially John. And we probably won't have a meeting on our regular August date because there's lots of folks that can't make it. And then if it came down to it, we could still be of use, this discussion in September. Is that what I'm hearing? That does push it out. I mean, that's 2 months from now, it pushes out that quite a bit, but it's not seasonal. It's not like we have to wait a whole other year. It could start, yeah. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that, okay.
Right now, it's scheduled for August.
What is?
Mobility infrastructure, sorry.
On this topic?
And I was thinking of October is the other project that I'm working on, safety improvement program.
When in August?
Yeah, August what?
The 9th.
Oh,
Okay, we wouldn't even meet.
We
in
wouldn't
the
even
first
meet till
place.
then
Right.
anyway.
So I guess the question is do we need to move?
Okay,
Which is a.
I can do
discussion.
before the 9th. I'm gone, the 16th through September 2nd.
Can I say something?
please. Thank you. Help us out here.
I'm so sorry. I just really want to honor what you said about not being rushed. And I am loving this conversation. It's a great conversation. And I have 2 fellow council members who are on the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee, so I know I can't really speak for them, but I'm really feeling strongly that I would want you to continue this conversation and that we would move this item to September, October. We could, and if you could have a special meeting in August, then I think maybe we could push it out.
If we can't find a time for a quorum or a special meeting in August, is it worth the risk of not meeting until September?
I think it is.
Okay.
Because I'm really thinking this is an excellent discussion.
Okay, well, we have our answers.
Okay, and I'll manage my fellow council members. I'll let them know that I need an executive session.
We should try to have a special
I'll
meeting in
second that
August,
motion.
and I'm happy to do that. I just wanted to make sure that just in case,
Yeah.
you know, we understood that risk.
It'd be an early August, right? And it would be a Thursday.
I don't know.
I'm so open, except for after the 16th.
Okay. Did you have any closing comments?
No, this conversation was excellent, especially for the first time back in person. I really appreciate all your thoughts and feedback and questions, and I'll definitely go back and look through those questions that I didn't know the answer to, and I will hopefully have the answers, or at least some sort of response to those as well. So,
I do think you could probably at least get a number of households in the study areas of both Talus and.
yes,
Is it possible?
I do have some population numbers somewhere in my computer.
Is it also possible to get demographic,
Oh,
or
demographic.
age demographic?
Demographics are hard neighborhood level because of the way the census and neighborhood American
The census
sur-
block
survey,
data,
yeah.
American Community
It's really
Survey.
hard to get those demographics, but I can break out.
You could do,
population.
but you know what you could do, you could get household, you could get a value of household,
Yes, yeah, I can get
assessed value of the households,
so, yes.
that would tell you a lot. And
I'm just thinking
that's,
about that marketing question, right?
absolutely.
I think density might be a good measure though.
yeah, density would be good.
Great.
Okay, very good. With that, I will thank you for all of your hard work, all of your in-depth presentation. Thank you all for indulging me as we kind of try to walk through this and try to learn how to get this kind of discussion going. With that, I'll go ahead and move to reports, and the first one is 5A, the board work plan.
Well,
which we just blew up.
and to that, I would only add that, yes, the next meeting, we will find out a date and time that works for most, if not everyone, so we can conduct that special meeting and continue this conversation. Next, and I don't know if you wanted to go into that opportunity that we have, Cynthia, with having the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee joint meeting with the TAP after our meeting in August, a special meeting in August, the possibility of meeting with jointly with the committee in September, which will be a great opportunity to align what how the TAP can help support council with our discussions and decisions moving forward. I think that would be a great timing after wrapping up the comments. The other thing is that we are evaluating moving forward, kind of doing this type of meetings that we did today, more robust discussions on one topic, especially topics that would involve policy decisions instead of trying to wrap up a full agenda with other topics, which are great too, but focusing on those topics that would be more policy related, and trying to get the board's feedback on how this type of meeting, how would you feel about this type of meeting moving forward?
Just wanted to kind of echo that and just say that I think it's important to make sure, so Julian and I have both talked about this when I accepted the nomination to be the chair again. I think I mentioned something about this, but I wanted to make sure that Julian and I both, like, it's not just our opinion, but I had really begun to think in the last, really gradually, but even more so in the last several months, that we were kind of a mile wide and an inch deep. We were touching a lot of subjects, but there wasn't really a role for us to dig in and come up with a recommendation. And so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just our opinion. I think as an advisory board, our job is to give advice on that which we've been asked to give advice on. So it's not really our decision at the end. That work plan should be set by those seeking the advice, but we certainly can have input and say that we think we're more effective if we get to do fewer things and go a little bit deeper. And I just wanted to see if the whole board felt that way, or was just want to make sure I was representing all of us. And this is a good example of what that might look like. The downside is, though, there are lots of things that will come through that are, like, we've had a couple, like, these are really administrative updates that don't have a lot of, opportunity to really change policy. Like, we had a discussion about concurrency briefly, and we said, well, I think the response from staff was, this isn't really the time to revisit all these essential policy and values in concurrency. We're just updating it. And so we kind of have to let go of some of that because we can't do it all, right? And so I just wanted to make sure. I'm seeing a lot of nods, so I'm going to interpret that to mean that you guys agree with this sort of move back towards kind of meaty.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think meeting in person and dialing down on a focused area is a lot more effective than the environment we were trying to kind of run the meetings in. So this was a perfect first meeting for us to gather and really address this topic. So I know I really appreciated everybody's opinion in our conversation and the level of conversation we had tonight versus, in the past we've had, as you mentioned, mile wide, inch deep. I felt, not really providing much value as a board member. And so I think that's a great suggestion. And so that's my 2 cents.
Did you have anything else on that item?
On the agenda, no,
The work plan?
oh, sorry, yes, the work plan, what's the word? Yeah, yes, that was it. We will be, next 3 things would be our meeting to bring back the topic about the shuttle, the mobility and infrastructure joint meeting, and after that, getting updates from transit and CPD group.
Great. Do you have a staff report?
Well, for the staff report, what I will do is kind of go me, and then I will ask the Jones to, if they have something else to add, but we have just recently advertised the project for the Newport pedestrian bridge over anti-aircraft creek and race intersection on Newport that would help improve the pedestrian kind of gap that exists right on the anti-aircraft creek. And also because King County's project that they are doing for the trail, the improvements on the trailhead, that would that project, we just advertised it for construction. We are very excited to open bids next week for that project. Also, the ITS survey, just a reminder, we sent an email about a week ago. It is still open, but closes within a week, so you still have some time to
Okay, got that. You're looking,
provide your input.
ITS.
ITS.
ATS surveys.
I can send the email out again, so just a reminder. We still have one more week.
be great if you could send it again. I either missed it or.
Yes, I'll
Is it
send
a
that.
transit survey or a transportation survey?
The ITS,
About technology.
Intelligent
Oh,
transportation
yes.
system.
okay.
And yes, now I will head it over to the other Johns. Yeah, the two Johns.
Yeah, a couple other items to add while we're talking about surveys, and we can also email this out. We're doing a survey for the city's ADA self-evaluation and transition plan. Hope that you guys will be able to take that individually. The Newport Way Maple to Sunset project that you guys helped us out with. Wanted to give a update that we did a public involvement process where we had a public meeting as well as a survey, and the results of that will be going to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee. And those are the things I have in addition to what Isabel had.
E-scooters.
Do you have anything?
I don't think
Yeah,
so.
RIP e-scooters, yeah.
What's that?
So, RIP e-scooters.
Oh, yes, I guess I could update you all formally on the scooters. So these scooters unfortunately did not pass city council last month. It was 4-3, which is higher than expected. So, so it was an interesting experience, and I think hopefully it will set up a possible, in the future. I think it really got the discussion going, especially on the council level, about what a possible comparable system might look like in the future. But yeah, I think it was a valuable exercise at the very least. And, but yeah, formally it did not pass. So.
Was there a real outstanding reason why it didn't pass? Because I wasn't paying attention.
There were a few things. Infrastructure was one of them. Safety was another one. Yes, and also the other one. Oh, just community awareness and desire, like that kind of, kind of more squishy area of things. But yeah, that was kind of the outcome there.
So what did you mean by infrastructure?
The existence or non-existence of safe places to ride the scooters.
Okay, moving along, chair report, that would be me. Do we have one or two resignations? Do we have both resignations?
Two.
Okay, so I did want to acknowledge Joseph is moving on to the next chapter of his life. We're all very excited for you. And so he has formally resigned from the board, and as well as Erica, So
You show up.
Jamie, I'm sorry, I've met everybody online and for some reason Jamie and Erica I always get those reversed, sorry. Jamie Walter has also resigned due to just capacity issues. And I do want to make sure that everybody in this room is thinking about recruitment. So for the 2023, I hope that we have 2 or 3 applications for every single open position on the Transportation Advisory Board because it's going to be such a great thing to serve on. It's not too early to be thinking about recruiting people. And I'm hoping that the kind of work that we're doing, that we did tonight, makes it a more interesting thing to volunteer your time with anyway. And let's see, so that's the main thing I wanted to say. We already covered the work plan. And that's it for the chair report. Did you have a piece of report?
No.
Well, we thank you for your service and we wish you the best of luck. It's gonna be, yeah, we all know, we all been there, so we.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been like a really awesome experience. So, yeah, I've learned a lot. So thank you.
Good.
Nice to have you with us.
Yeah, for sure.
And good luck and enjoy your adventures.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Do we have any other business or announcements?
Yes, very important. The city wants to invite board members to next Tuesday concerts. To read these concerts on the green, where we would like to, in appreciation of your work, your service with the TAP, you will be receiving a gift bag from 5:30 to 7 p.m. next Tuesday. So please stop by and get your gift bag.
And that's a concert on the green at the community center.
Yes.
Next Tuesday.
Thanks. That's exciting. Yes.
Is it like city swag?
Usually, I guess we'll have to wait to
We-
find out.
yeah. Excellent. Okay, well, with that, I think that we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right.
So nice to see everybody actually live in person.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely.
I know.